What's up, everybody? Welcome to bschool101.com. In this video, I'm going to be talking about MIDI. Now, if you're just starting, you're probably wondering, what is MIDI? Well, MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And what that is basically, in the early 80s, they wanted to create, when I say they, manufacturers of digital musical gear wanted to create a language, a unified language that would allow different pieces of digital music equipment to communicate to one another, like synthesizers, controllers, and computers. And in order to do that, they created this MIDI interface, or this MIDI language. Now, MIDI is not an audio signal. Okay, it does not transmit like, an analog plug, an audio signal. It doesn't do that. What MIDI does is it transmits information about tonation, the velocity of your performance, volume, panning, and a whole host of other parameters. But it actually is a trigger for communicating the information to another device. And they all understand this language, okay? It would be the equivalent to, speaking Chinese. In order for one man to communicate to another woman in Chinese, you both have to have a unified perspective of what the terminology means. Same thing with this equipment. It's a language that allows them to sync together. Now, you might be asking, okay, well, I want to make beats. Why do I need to know what MIDI is? Well, in order to make beats, you're going to need to use a controller or some kind of triggering device that will basically allow you to record your performance and transmit the information that you're playing to your VST instruments or external rack gear or synthesizers, whatever you're using to make your music with. And an example of a controller is the one I got right here. Now, I'm going to do another lesson specifically on controllers and what a controller is and how to pick the right controller. But for now, I just want to show you what it is. So this controller is critical when making beats. And in order to control or to trigger and use this as an output source, you need to have MIDI. Okay? Now, the good thing about technology is most of the new MIDI interfaces have USB. So all you have to do is plug, directly to the USB on your computer, and you don't have to buy another MIDI interface. You can just directly hook up and do the MIDI right through your USB, which is pretty common in most controllers nowadays. But back when I started doing this, and I know I always say back in the 90s, but just to be honest, it was different. We didn't have computers, so you had to use MIDI. Okay, and you had to use the old style MIDI plugs, and you had to have a MIDI plug to your controller, and then hook that up to something like a external rack gear, something like this right here. Now, this is the Proteus 2000. Just to give you a little bit of history, this was probably it was a very popular sound module in the 90s. It was used by a lot of famous producers that you guys I'm sure you're familiar with. And it was made by a company called called Emu. They made a whole line of racks. They made one called a MoFat, which had like different hip-hop sounds. They had an orchestra one. They had a whole bunch of them, and it was pretty well known. So this would be like the equivalent to what a VST instrument is nowadays, like the Machine or Massive, where you're going to have a assortment, a wide range of different, sound patches to choose from. So I want to show you guys right now just a basic hookup and how to actually hook up a controller via MIDI to control an input source. Okay, so now I'm going to show you exactly how to hook up a MIDI setup just between a controller and an external rack mount. Okay, now what I'm going to use is just a simple MIDI plug here. Let me grab my controller. All right, this is just a basic MIDI man controller. I've had it for a long time. Turn my power onto it, real simple. Wow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the MIDI plug here. I'm just going to plug it right into the MIDI outlet, okay? And now the Proteus 2000, the infamous Proteus 2000, all I'm going to do here is just plug it right into the input. Simple. MIDI in. Blot out. All right. Now I already got this plugged into my my sound card, so let me turn up the volume here a little bit. Sweet. Holla. Oops. See, this Produce was pretty hot. It had a bunch of different sounds. Some dry ass sounds. Back then, you know, these sounds weren't mixed and the processors weren't as powerful as they are today. So they didn't have quite the texture and character that a lot of the VSTs have now. But they had some good sounds. Some dope ass guitars. So let me get on channel 1 here. See, it was a lot of this fooling around the same way you have to do with the VSTs. So it's just, the VSTs are a virtual design of exactly what we used to do back in the day. So this is a couple of snares. Whack. A flute. A little flute for you. See, so pretty simple. You see, get it here. If I hit a chord, it's transmitting the information from the controller to the sound module. Real simple, man. So now if I change the sound on the sound module, drum kit. See, I'm gonna bust this out again to make a beat. I missed this old mother effer. But yeah, it was real simple though. Real simple shit. So, all right, guys, that's the basic of what MIDI is. A little demonstration of how it works. Now stay tuned, guys, because in the next lesson, I'm going to talk about controllers, how to pick them, and then also we're going to talk about the pulse and the heartbeat that holds MIDI together, and that's sequencers. All right, guys, check you later.